Hello, welcome to Legatus Legionis. I am Thomas, a man of prayer, and today I'm going to be talking about three kinds of dark nights that John of the Cross talks about. That is the dark night of the senses. Now, there are two dark nights that John of the Cross talks about, the dark night of the senses and the more strenuous one, the dark night of the soul. We're all very, very afraid of the dark night of the soul, aren't we? Well, a lot of people are also afraid of the dark night of the senses. The dark night of the senses occurs in what is called the purgative state. And basically, there are three types of nights. And John has it specified as the early part of the night, the middle of the night, and before the dawn rises. Okay, so we have three kinds of nights. And he says that the first night is detachment from the world. The second night is faith. Faith. The third night is God Himself. Now, each of these nights brings about a darkness within the mind of a person, within their understanding, and a darkness within their senses, their attachment to the world. These dark nights are different. In other words, the first part of the dark night, which is detachment from the world, isn't absolute darkness. It is the middle part of the night that is the darkest, let's say around midnight. At that time, a person is going by faith alone, faith alone. And the third part of the night is the darkness that the mystery of God brings. And this is before the dawn. So at the end of these three dark nights, a person will move into what is called the illuminative stage. Now, the illuminative stage is not the highest stage, but it is an enlightened stage. The person who has been through the dark night of the senses in detachment from the world, living by faith, walking by faith, and then by entering into the mystery of God, will find himself moving on to the illuminative stage. Now, at what point does a person move on? Well, not until God thinks you're ready. When God thinks you're ready, He'll move you on to the illuminative stage. And John also talks a lot about that. The first part of the dark night, detachment from the world, I don't think is that well understood in the times that we are in. What do I mean by that? I mean, we hear a lot about detachment, sometimes in Catholic circles, not being attached to this or that, because we understand that attachment to something means that we will be less attached to God. A lot of people then assume, if I were to say detachment from the world, they'll say, oh, I'm already doing that. But is that really true? What would happen tomorrow if there was a complete collapse within our economic system? All right? And we had to do things in a more old-fashioned way, like the ways that our great-great-great-grandparents had to do. Wouldn't we be like complaining and longing to have the things that we had before? What happens when you don't have a car to drive? Okay? What is that experience like? What happens when you lose a job and you're afraid you'll never find another job? See, all of these produce and show you that you are much more attached to the world than you think you are. Now, I'm not advocating for people that they go do a St. Francis of Assisi. You know, St. Francis, of course, fell in love with God, and then he basically lived homeless, and he begged for his food the way homeless people of his time did. And I'm not telling you to do that. My first suggestion is that don't think that you are so detached from the world. You say, well, what can we do? Well, work on it. Work on it. You know, one of the beautiful ways that I see women a lot of times, mothers and wives, showing detachment is a lot of times when they are trying to take care of their husband and their children, they find that their children's needs or their husband's needs usurp their own needs. This is a very, very beautiful way to show detachment. When a woman, out of love for her children or out of love for her husband, sets aside what she wants and then goes ahead and does what her children and what her husband wants, all right? But we can all learn from this example of a good, loving woman. We can all learn to sometimes set aside what we want or what we want to have happen, you know. Now, does that mean that we become doormats? No, this is not about acquiescing to evil. Okay, we have a lot of people that are supporting an evil agenda in our times. Okay, going along with an evil agenda is not part of detachment from the world. All right. Now, I'm not telling you how to handle situations where people bring up evil ideas. All right. I think that we all need wisdom in everything that we do. Wisdom is the most important thing that we can think about in approaching our everyday life situations. Detachment can be brought upon us by the circumstances of our lives. When a person, like I already gave the example, loses a job and doesn't know what they're going to do, when a person doesn't have the income that they had before, and they can't buy the things that they wanted to before, this can also force you into a position of detachment. Because a lot of the problem isn't with the material world. The church teaches us that the world is good, but it also tries to teach us that attachment to the world, or how we relate to the world in being attached to it, is of great evil. Because anything that we do that we attach ourselves to then becomes something that separates us from God. Because only to God are we supposed to be attached. Now, a lot of people don't understand this thing about being attached to God. They think that being attached to God is maybe going to Mass on Sundays. Well, it might be if you're only starting out in the faith, but if you've already been going to Mass a few years, it's time to learn to make God even more center of your life. So then we begin and we can talk about the dark night of faith. When everything is going good, your faith is not tested. It is only when things start going bad or difficult that you begin to need to have faith in God. Having faith in God when you don't understand or you can't figure it out or you cannot seem to solve the problem, this is the dark night of faith. And it is not something that needs to be rejected. We can acknowledge that God is asking us to live more by faith. Now, is that the kind of faith that says, you know what? My rent is coming up and I don't have it, but God is going to provide. Well, I've been living as a man of prayer for over 40 years, and I will tell you this. There'll be times when something happens and everything is taken care of, but there'll be other times when it doesn't. You say, but I had faith. Is that the faith that we're really talking about? Are we talking about faith like a TV evangelist? Send me some money and God will give you tenfold. Is that what we're really talking about? Or are we talking about faith as in faith in God? And do we still have that faith when everything is going bad? When it doesn't seem like things are going to work out and they don't work out? Do we then say, you know what? I don't believe anymore. I'm going to find maybe the Mormons know better, you know? Or maybe Kenneth Copeland knows better. We're going to find ourselves abandoning God instead of looking towards God and continuing to believe. This happened to me just as I described. My truck broke down. And it broke down in the back of a church in Waco. That is not what I prayed for. I began praying, and I prayed, and I prayed. I spent from morning till evening when they shut the church that I prayed. And I prayed because there was a job opening, and I was going to get a job, and I was going to get this situation turned around. I went for the job interview, and the supervisor thought that I couldn't handle the job, so I didn't get the job. And that's how that turned out. And not only that, I was stuck behind that church for 2 years. All right? What happened there? What were the blessings that I received? I don't know. I don't know what blessings I received from being stuck behind the church, absolutely sleeping in that truck at night. That was during the winter as well as during the summer, and cooking out of a crock pot that I had plugged into an outlet from the church. And then, you know, I was there doing that. And I still don't know the reason for that. The dark night of faith. Then we get to the third part of the dark night, which is the dark night of God. And this is not an absolute darkness like in the darkness of faith. This is a darkness of entering more into intimacy with God, and God himself, when he shines his light on us, becomes darkness for us. Why? It is like looking into the sun. If you look directly into the sun, eventually you will not be able to see and you will be in darkness. This is also the way that it is with God. And he's saying, hold on, I didn't sign up for that. I thought that I was going to enter into a relationship with God and everything was going to work out and everything was going to be peachy keen in my life. I didn't sign up for being in a state of not knowing what is going on. You know, I thought drawing closer to God would be this sweet delight and wonderful. Well, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is very sweet and wonderful and beautiful. And at other times, it is the darkness of God's presence. And if you reject this kind of an experience of entering into the mystery of God, you will hear, and by the way, you can enter into it because you will feel drawn into this darkness. And you will feel even a little afraid. You won't feel afraid because it's evil. You will feel afraid because you don't know. You know, we get afraid as human beings when we can't figure things out and we don't know and we're not in control. This is the third part of the night, you know, in the mystery with God. So I encourage you to go ahead and accept the dark night of detachment from the world, the dark night of faith, and the dark night of entering into the mystery of God. This is Legatus Legionis. Say a prayer for me. I am praying for you. I will talk to you later.